Okay, thank you guys. What? I'm leaving you out of my will. Okay, I am so happy. No, make that delighted to be back in Martins Ferry in this esteemed library for another festival. The first time I came to Martins Ferry was in May 1982 to attend the second festival in honor of James Wright. Ted and Helen Wright, my in-laws, drove me here from Zanesville. Ted proceeded to show me some of the many Wright homesteads, views of the Ohio River, and the library at the Shreve High football stadium and the old high school. Of course, since James and Ted's childhood, some of their homesteads were gone. There is an addition to the high school, which I understand is no longer, and a wide highway divides the town. I met the festival committee, headed by Tom Flynn, with John Stork, Mickey Rickey, and Kathleen Kink Lanatone, among others. Although the library where the festival has been held was new since Jamestown time, I met Miss Annie Tanks, the former librarian, who told me that James spent hours there, often closed the place up, and sometimes wore boots covered with mud, proving he had recently walked by the river. I also met some of James' family, and for the first time, including his Aunt Florence, who said she came to the festivals to learn more about her nephew. In the ensuing years, there have been many changes and many losses. Some of the guest poets have died, as well as some committee members, including Mickey Rickey, who was a special friend, while other committee members have moved away and cannot be here today. But we are so happy David and Midge Miles did come from Pittsburgh. There have also been losses among members of the Wright family, so it isn't true that the more things change, the more they stay the same. They change. On a lighter note, there surely has been a change which no one has mentioned. In the time of Me Too and multi-gender bathrooms, I think I would be completely welcome to join the guys at the bare-ass beach, with or without a bathing suit. Now back to the present festival of 2018. The poets at my first festival were Galway Canal and Stanley Plumley. What a wonderful coincidence that Stanley is here for this special festival, along with Maggie Anderson and Dave Lucas. It promises to be a wonderful festival, and it already has been, mostly over now. Congratulations to the 2018 committee, who have done such a splendid job. Congratulations to John Blanc for writing such a splendid biography, and congratulations to our lifetime festival chairman, the splendid Tom Flynn. I'm going to start not by reading anything by James Wright, but a poem by Gerald Stern. Now, talking about being 80 and maybe not being here at the festival, Gerald Stern is 92, and he would have been here, but he's in Florida, so he couldn't come. But he did write a poem for me to read at the festival. So after a drink of, it's not Ohio water anymore, gosh. It's called The Beautiful. I never heard no, so I guess Jim Wright's ashes are scattered among the tea roses in Carlshire Park, a few steps from our apartment. And the East River was the beautiful Ohio in the last years he spent with Annie before his death. My river was Ohio too, but much more, but more like it was the How do you pronounce it? Yeah, thank you. Or someplace between two rivers, that and the Allegheny, as they merged with the beautiful and went a distance north before it curved around west, then south through filthy Weirton and God-forsaken Steubenville, on its way to the mother of rivers. He told me he used to listen to the Pirates games, so he knew the announcer, Rosie Rosewell. But I doubt if he ever heard Bishop Beck ask God to bless Rosie, as well as Mayor Scully and Councilman Walk and Eleanor Roosevelt, as he stood in front of his chorus of saints with their beautiful blue gowns and violins in the great church on Wiley Avenue, a block away from where I was born. Well, God bless Bishop Beck. God bless Jim Wright, too, who is not, I say not, in hell, for hell is Martin's Ferry. He said so himself, where he was baptized, and maybe bar mitzvah as well, in some absurd little synagogue, and his portion, as we say, was maybe John, the 15th chapter. No one has greater love than to lay down his life for his friend. John, a Jew like the others. God damn. I'm going to report those claps for Jerry. Now I have my few words are, interestingly enough, Stanley Plumley, to be about Fano, which you mentioned earlier, and I thought, oh, this is too many coincidences. I'm going to start by reading a favorite poem, a reply to Matthew Arnold on my 5th day in Fano, from this journey, and say a few words about the town of Fano. A reply to Matthew Arnold on my 5th day in Fano, and the epigraph is, in harmony with nature, restless fool, nature and man can never be fast friends. It is idle to speak of 5 mere days in Fano, or 5 long days, or 5 years. As I prepare to leave, I seem to have just arrived. To carefully split yet another infinitive, I seem to have been here forever or longer, longer than the sea's lifetime and the lifetime of all the creatures of the sea, than all the new churches among the hill pastures, and all the old shells wandering around bodiless just off the clear shore. Briefly, in harmony with nature, before I die, I welcome the old curse. A restless fool and a fast friend to Fano, I have brought this wild chive flower down from a hill pasture. I offer it to the Adriatic. I'm not about to claim that the sea does not care. It has its own way of receiving seeds, and today the sea may well have a flowering one, with a poppy to float above it and the Venetian navy underneath. Goodbye to the living place, and all I ask it to do is stay alive. And my little talk is called A Fast Friend to Fano. James and I first visited Fano, a small town on the Adriatic Sea, in 1972. I had discovered the place while perusing an elegant cookbook by Samuel Chamberlain, filled with beautiful photographs of Italy, accompanied by recipes I could never attempt. I did take in the page about Fano, though, which included a shot of the Ark of Augustus, built in 2 A.D. The beach and a little ancient history, what a combination. We had to go. We did, and loved it. Despite high season, we found a peaceful part of Fano, as well as a small, well-run Pensione Astoria, owned by a genial middle-aged couple who catered to families, served good food, and provided us with a beach just a few yards away. We soon found a favorite cafe under linden trees and a little open market. We had picnics on the beach, took walks in the countryside, explored the town, and drifted along the quay after dinner. 7 years later, after an unpleasant experience in the city of Bari, we returned and were delighted to find Fano had not changed at all. We stayed at the same pensione, run by the same couple, and enjoyed a pleasant room with a sparkling white tiled bathroom. We especially liked our little balcony with a view of the sea, a sweeping stretch of beach, and several imposing headlands in the distance. We swam, walked for hours, and enjoyed the outdoor cafes, just as we had before, not to mention breakfast and dinner in a communal dining room where families chatted back and forth from their respected tables. We were delighted when the same little boy stood by our table every evening to gaze at James, who blew smoke rings for him. Jonathan writes about that village as if he too had been with us. After our frightening experience in harsh Bari, he felt we had, quote, ascribed healing properties, unquote, to Fano. He mentioned our long walks into the fields and farmlands among wildflowers, olive trees, and vineyards, but never quite reaching the steep headlands seen from the beach. The quiet of the town, the green shade of linden trees in the piazzas, and the Adriatic breeze cast a spell. That's, unquote, Jonathan's words. For 5 days, we not only admired the sweep of beach and distant mysterious headlands, but actually stepped into that view. We seemed to have been there forever. 9 months later, James was in Mount Sinai Hospital, diagnosed with cancer of the tongue. To keep up our spirits, we fantasized a trip to take once he had recovered. Unable to speak, James wrote down the dream itinerary on a yellow-lined pad: Fano, Verona, Sirmione, and Paris. He also wrote the dedication for his new book, This Journey, to the city of Fano, where we got well, from Annie and me. Fano being the place to which John had ascribed healing properties. 25 years later, in the summer of 2004, Jonathan, along with his wife Sarah, their daughter Emma, and I went to Fano. We arrived by car to discover so much traffic on one-way streets that I didn't recognize anything until we reached Pensione Astoria. As we piled into the lobby with our luggage, I was reassured by the sight of a family wrapped in towels coming back from the beach. Something hadn't changed. However, it soon became evident things were very different. The lobby was now dwarfed by a new addition that consisted of a large room, most of which was encased in glass, furnished with couches of black and orange. A long bar by the glass wall was presided over by a man who glowered his welcome. It seemed that a nightclub of sorts, named the Betty Boop Music Bar, was part of the old Pensione, now named Hotel Astoria. A tired blonde woman of about 40 finally came to check us in. She gave us keys and pointed out the new to me elevator. Emma and I were assigned to my old room, now crowded by an oversized double bed, bunk beds, and a wardrobe without hangers. Only the little balcony and sunny white bathroom were the same. The next morning completely confirmed that things indeed had changed. We came down to breakfast to find an empty room with no one in charge. Eventually, a waitress appeared and brought us coffee and stale slices of bread. Apparently, the Hotel Astoria was no longer a family place where the owners took good care of their guests. Still, the blonde woman in charge tried to please us. She promised John and Sarah a new room away from the loud music of the Betty Boop music bar and English breakfasts. Overnight, the weather had turned gray and cool, so instead of a swim, we took a walk, planning to trace the footsteps where James and I had once hiked. We went down the beach, crossed a little stream, ducked under the railroad trestle, and stopped short. Instead of a rustic track leading to fields, small clusters of trees, and the occasional farmhouse, we came to a wide highway jammed with speeding cars, utterly impossible to cross. On the other side stretched miles of cottages and gated villas instead of meadows. Only the sea and distant headlands remained the same. However, 4 instances occurred during the visit which gave cheer and restored my faith to the town. I have bought a copy of this journey, the book dedicated to Fano, and envisioned presenting it to the town's mayor. A woman at the Tourist Bureau was a great help. She called the town hall and set up an appointment so we could meet the mayor. We found the town hall, found the Wright office, and were greeted by the interpreter, a lovely young woman from Belgium. Then we met Sindaco, or mayor, Stefano Aguti, charming, handsome, and molto simpatico. He and I shook hands. When I introduced him to Sarah, John, and Emma, there was more handshaking. The mayor seemed delighted with the book and smiled broadly when the interpreter read him the dedication and showed him a reply to Matthew Arnold on my 5th day in Fano. We shook hands again, and he kissed me on both cheeks. I fluttered out into the main piazza, very happy that James' book was in Fano and safe in the mayor's hands. And I didn't wash my face that night. But that night, encouraged by a description in Sarah's guidebook of a place, quote, like a pensione of 25 years ago, we tried it out. Once again, I was in a room where families were happily eating and talking at their own tables. We were served a simple but delicious meal by a cheerful waitress who brought us pasta, a large platter of meat and vegetables, salad, fresh fruit, mineral water, and a bottle of the house wine. In between courses, the people chatted to those at other tables, no doubt discussing their day. Now we understand what you meant by a pensione, said John and Sarah. Now we see how it must have been. On the morning we left, I handed my key to the blonde woman and told her that my husband and I had stayed there 25 years ago. She explained it was her parents who'd been the proprietors. Now she owned the hotel and her husband the music bar. Her eyes filled with tears as she told me her parents were dead. We shook hands, not letting go for a few minutes. Perhaps she too remembered a sweeter time. Then John had a surprise for me. Instead of heading toward the highway leading to Padua, he drove to the road we hadn't been able to cross. We went past many cottages as well as villa after villa. Finally, John turned onto a small road which eventually took us to the beautiful and peaceful countryside. Here were fields, a few farms, hill passages, and plowed rows of wheat, olive orchards, and meadows of wildflowers that sloped down to the sea, just like the place of our long-ago walks. Far, far beyond us stood the regal, indestructible headlands, a tribute to nature, and at that moment, a true friend to me. I've swiped Tom's tribute to James in introduction by giving my own. Yeah, and he'll forgive me. Yes. It's a pleasure to introduce you to Jonathan Blanc, the author of James Wright, A Life in Poetry. 3 decades after James' death in 1980, the writer Leslie Marmon Silko gave a reading at the 92nd Street Y. She and James have met in 1975 and exchanged many wonderful letters. Jonathan, who was familiar with the letters, attended the reading and afterwards spoke to her about James. Leslie recalled James as one who had, quote, a warmth and kindness and humanity, a gentleness and love for the world and its beings, unquote. I feel John has captured those very qualities of which Leslie spoke in his splendid biography. To say I'm delighted with his book is an understatement. Since no one is perfect, not all of James' qualities were sterling, but John has beautifully captured James' humor, his intellect, his love of nature, gift for friendship, and total devotion to poetry. It is a great honor and pleasure to be speaking with him. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Blanc. My escort.